Afternoon, everyone. I know I haven't made a video in a while. I've still been playing the game. Obviously, I'm prepping for squad goals, which is coming up in 6 weeks. And just stuff has gotten in the way, but I want to come back with an update with some new ideas, some thoughts. So, what you see in front of you is not my official squad goals list or anything. It's just some ideas I've been throwing out. So, obviously, squad goals brings into the fold, you know, I can't share some models. Uh, we just got new Crisis, that I've been playing on, but I haven't got to test all of them. I played on. It's weird. Despite having samples and Deadline in my list, I've never played Deadline. I've played samples like 6 times. It feels like I always pull it for what it feels like. Um, but I'm constantly thinking and going through with my team about like the last couple models, right? Where Rhino is, where Crimson Dynamo is, where Wong is. I think the other seven are pretty set. I've said this before. Even Man Thing I think has cemented his place. Still need to play him more, but I think he's good there. I think he has his uses on Fisk and stuff. Maybe Wedding Party. I think there's definitely room for him, and he's so cool. So why not? And so things I've been thinking about, like Shang and Bill, are gone. I can't take them. And so I've been opening up and saying, well, what can I play, right? Like, what's out there that I can play? Is there anything interesting? What sort of threat math do I need? And I've been going through that. And there was, even before the taco truck episode, I was thinking, I was like, man, there's 17s out there. I have a 17. What if I get stuck versus webs on 17? It's very obvious you're going to take Blade, you're going to take Voodoo, and then, okay, so you have 9 points left. So you can go 4-4-4-3-2 or 3-3-3, right? So I don't have enough threes, I do have enough threes in my roster to do that. I could go Zemo, Mummy, Man Thing, or in this particular roster, you go Wong, Rhino, and then either Zemo or Mummy. You're affiliated either way. There's pluses and minuses to both. If you're on a D shape, you probably go Zemo. Maybe something else you consider Mummy. Mummy's much better at killing webs and he's hard to be killed, but Zemo's faster and he's a safe grab. Like, there's pluses and minuses to both. In fact, you could just take both if you went all threes. And then you'd have to take Man Thing. And so Man Thing has his own, I don't want to say issues, but his own like pluses and minuses. Um, and so I've been thinking, I'm like, man, is there a three out there that I could bring that is like super good into webs or in these scenario situations? And things stick out, and it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be affiliated because I have an unaffiliated slot if I go like Blade, Voodoo, Mummy, and Zemo. And so one more three. And so you think Black Panther could be one. He has Mystic Attacks, he has a Pounce, which is less useful because I don't have a ton of throws. It's still fine. It's movement, right? And he can siege, blah blah blah. And I still think he's a solid idea. I probably wouldn't use him in any other place, but uh, and then I had trouble thinking of others. Magic is a good one, but am I really going to take Magic just for webs? And we have an Apoc player, so he's going to have her anyway. And this is all of the mind of like Squaggles is in 6 weeks. Who knows what's going to get revealed at Adepticon? Like, is there a character pack coming? That's where like everything. I don't think everything will change. I think if we're 5 weeks before the event, I think some splashes and stuff will change, but I don't expect to like revamp like my entire thing. So this conversation may be moot in 2 weeks if something pops up for Adepticon. Who knows? But we're going off the idea that nothing's changing at the moment, and we're just in the new Crisis world with the restriction of Crisis. Back to what I was saying. Okay, so now you have these, and I'm trying to think, what can I put there? What could I put there? And I really don't like Wong that much. I think he's fine. I think there's a 17 where you take Rhino, Zemo, Wong, and like that is actually not bad if you're on a D shape with 17 like samples, because it'd be them with priority potentially. Then he can sit at the back. There's a lot of people you can give power to that can do at least mildly interesting things turn one, like Voodoo can possess Toad just straight up the bat without even attacking, which is fine. You won't be able to pick it up, but you could just possess him to drop it, and then he's kind of garbage after that. You could, I think you can do stuff. I guess if you think of like hammers and a D shape, the one thing I really like to do if you have Wong is you can give a power to whoever you want to pick up the back hammer, and they can pick it up and still double walk. They could bump to pick it up and still double walk to a side D, so they're not stuck on the back with their hammer. Especially if like Blade has it, like you might want him in the action. Like you might do it later on, but like you might want him in the action type stuff. Obviously with Rhino, you can start on the back and just pick it up, but he actually can't get to a side D with double walks from the back. So if you give him a power, he can pick up the hammer and then walk and bump. And then he, depending on where you are in the D, he actually can attack some people. But at least he can double walk there at the very least. And so he starts on the side with Wong in the back. So I don't think actually Wong on a D is the end of the world. Well, if you're on hammers, well, it doesn't matter. It works on samples too, which is the other. The only time I'd be stuck on 17, unless I chose it, would be like Extremis samples would be a good example. So he could do the same thing with the sample. It's not a hammer, but he could pick it up, walk, bump, potentially attack the side depending on where somebody put up. And you know, that's a pretty good scenario team. I mean, you have two steals. You have Blade, who is not a scenario piece, but he's a good fighter, and you know, like Zemo can rotate really well. You have Bump to do some rotational stuff. Like, yeah, sure, maybe it's not like Rhino's probably an interesting one where like turn one, it's not that useful. I think it gets him some. I don't have TTS but it does get him some distances where, like, if you walk and bump towards a B, one he can walk bump and get on a B, which he can't do naturally. So I think actually that is more of a big deal than people think, because like on Infinity, being able to walk to the enemy one and just like start in their face is actually pretty funny. And you can test it, so right, you might even just have the advantage for one. But depending on where they stand on the B, like if you walk bump, you can attack them, and place obviously on it. So there are things he can be like obnoxious. McCrane is another example where he can walk bump and pretty much cover the entire enemy one, and so he can attack, and then maybe he hits a power and he can try to flip it. Like he can be annoying. Yeah, sure, he's not going to end the world, but you know, would you pay one power to get an attack with Rhino? I think most people would, right? It also is interesting because, you know, he's usually flush with power after people start attacking him, so he's a good person to pick up. And then, sure, he's very mobile once he gets going, but you still, like, it's still the difference between, like, what's I'm trying to say? Like, a bump into an attack is almost range 5. Right? So if you're only, like, no matter where you are, whether you have power or not, like whether you have 3 power to slide or not, he can cover a very great distance with bump. You know, you could bump, attack, slide somewhere. You know what I mean? Things like that where, you know, 1 power to him is whatever at the end of the game. So he can get around. He's already a good model, and you can put stuff on him, and he's aggressive. Like, there's just things. He's just a good model. And when you can't take Bill or Shang because somebody else took him, you know, you start going down the roster and saying, "Oh, is Rhino a good pick? Maybe he is." If you go this, and then you have 2 steals. Crimson Dynamo, again, he's one to kind of think about. Where okay, E's are gone, he's not as good. Sure, that's not there, but also Loki isn't as prevalent because of the Asgard door nerfs, and that's what really kicked him out of the meta before E's even went away. You still have things like Fisk and Wedding Party. Wedding Party's not like super close. They might eventually be close, but they still clump people up, right? Like, you don't need 6-person beams to be good. 2 or 3 dice beams are perfectly fine. He's also kind of interesting. I think he's on McCrane. He's kind of interesting. Fisk, he's fine because you don't really care if he's stunned. Okay, sure. People tend to attack you in damages of like 1 or 2. So, okay, you might lose the power there. He has a gainer. Okay. You can't meditate. But whatever. So, like, from a power perspective, he's not really getting screwed by the stun. Shock is a great condition. Again, on Fisk, when people are close, like, he gets a bunch of beams. He shocks people. He gets rid of wilds. Like, he has kind of a nice presence in that kind of situation. And I think one thing I haven't not been learning, but one thing that's nice that I've been seeing with more and more splashes that I've been considering, even if I'm not playing them, but just from a you know, thinking about a perspective, and Red Skull kind of has this, but you need to hit the trigger, is this whole like jumping in and out. And I think Bots really talked about it a lot on Taco Truck a couple times, and I'll bring him up again for another thing. But Dynamo has that too, right? When you get the power going, you can bump off, you can place off of your thing, beam people, and then bump back. And so having these two functions of movement essentially, the same thing with Space Maw. He could bump forward, hit two people, and bump back to a secure. I think having the ability to go back is really big because you're essentially giving yourself an attack action, right? Like I said, small movements can be attack actions. Rhino not being within range 3 of anybody, but being able to bump attack is basically paying 1 power for an attack. You're not really paying for the movement, you're paying for the attack. Being able to bump off your infinity, double tap somebody, and then rocket boost back because you're going to get power is an attack essentially for bump. So like you're translating it into that. So I think he's really good at doing that. Again, I don't have like a ton of teams with him. He's kind of like in a trial period, but again, when you're limited on 4s because the meta, people start taking things because of your teams, you start to kind of think, well, this might be cute here. They might not expect it, something they haven't seen before. It's been a while since you've seen a Dynamo. And so that's kind of like why they're here from like a testing perspective. Again, nothing locked in on them yet, but I have put them in my roster, just not on the board yet. It hasn't come up. It's been 10 minutes. We haven't got to really maybe the point of this conversation. I think there's two. One is on the taco truck that released a day or two ago. I finally have been listening to it in pieces. They started talking about Midnight Suns, and Nate asked bots, where does he think they are in the meta? Are they good? Are they bad? With the more scenario focused of things, it seems teams are going wider. Blah 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 blah. Whatever. And how does iHawk fit into this? Because Bots is a very forward iHawk player and has been. Is he gonna have to change his play style? Blah 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 blah. And I think it's a very good point. And I haven't said anything about it in videos recently. And maybe I'll make a post in Hot Strats because he kind of mentioned, like, why doesn't Schmidt put his thoughts there? I'll put them there for you, Nate, because you don't listen to this. And I think that's a good point. Ever since the new Crisis, I have run iHawk every game. I will then say there have been 2 or 3 games where I've regretted running him, whether I win or lose, because I'm like, oh, this feels bad. Like, we all know in Sword, like, you should kind of be on the wider side so you kind of have last activation. And I've run like these 4 wide teams, even with Red Skull 2 having the grunts on McCrane, and it just feels like, oh, like I need to be wider. I need more activations. It just feels bad not going last, and everything's so close that it's not. I do think there are play to flips where iHawk does fine, and he's not bad on McCrane. I think with McCrane, I think you need. I was running 19, so I was running like iHawk, Blade, iHawk, Red Skull 2, Man Thing, or Mummy. Either one, they're fine. And the problem I had was, it feels like when you're 4v5 at 19, it feels different than 4v5 at like 17, right? 4v5 at 17, the model quality to get to 5 wide at 17 is much less, right? Like, it's 2 threat less. But that's the difference between going, like, to fit a 5 threat at 17 and go 5 wide, you have to have 12 threat of other stuff. So it's either a 4, 3s, and a 2, or it's all 3s, right? Where at 19, you can have 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, for example. And so not having that, like, shitbag, like, Wong to kill to really flip things and not be useful, like, having more useful models, you feel it because, like, iHawk, like, if you think about iHawk, right, it's 17 versus 19. Like, he still has the same power he had, right? The same amount of attacks and throws and stuff. But if you're trying to kill things that are less weenies, you might not deny those 2 activations you need to deny to really get his value worth. Again, this is not a knock on iHawk. He's fine. He's good. He's great. But just from what I noticed, like, I almost should have picked 17 and said, okay, I get a decrease because I have to drop Red Skull and go Zemo. So I'm going to take a hit in power, but you're going to take a hit in power, and it's now easier for me to deny activations than it is for you. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thought process. So it's got me thinking about that kind of thing a little bit more. Or you could just run a team that's fucking better, wider. And just, at the end of the day, iHawk does decent damage if he gets his throw triggers and stuff. But, he's 2 7 dice attacks with some throws, and you could take a Rhino and a Zemo for his points, and they're not affiliated, but okay, you can take a Rhino and a, I don't know what, mummy, whatever, right, for his threat, and they do a lot of attacks and stuff. Like at the end of the day, right? They're pretty good. So the point, and so where that kind of led to is, I think you still put iHawk in your roster. I don't. I think I need to be more willing to go and say, okay, I'm not going to use them, and which is interesting because Bots has been like an iHawk person from the beginning, where I came from not playing iHawk at all. I came from playing these wider teams with Wong and Bill and Gwenham and stuff, and I said, all right, I'm going to play this scenario. I ran D's in my list. I did very well with it, and so I have played both ways, and so now it's kind of coming full circle where we're saying, all right, can we intermix those two styles more so now and say, when can I really know when to go one versus the other? And I think it's hard to do that, and I think it's easy to lean on, I'm always going to run iHawk, or when I was not playing him because he wasn't on the list, I'd say, I'm obviously not going to run him. And then you play on intrusions, you're like, I hate my life. And then you play on a D shape, and you're like, I hate my life, depending on which person you are. And you kind of have to, now we're in a new world. I do think on things like Mad Men and stuff, iHawk is fine. He can control his side. He can get back and forth. It's a different type of pay to flip. A lot more space in between things. You're not running the bases like with the last activation. Okay. Where does this all kind of get to? There's something that they were talking about scenario stuff, and then being like a more scenario focused Suns team, and how does that fit into the meta? So I actually don't think it's that bad. I think this idea that like why can't Suns play scenario, right? I think the only thing in my mind, not only, but one of the only things in my mind that kind of go, is Blade, right? He's fine at it, but he doesn't do anything special scenario, and he is a 4. He doesn't displace people, he just kills them. But his leadership is not, why is it bad for scenario? You get more attacks out of it. I think it's a more mid-rangey, I don't like saying that, but like, you do have this more mid-rangey style where, like, you can't tell me that a team of like Blade, Voodoo, Rhino, Mummy, Zemo at 18 isn't like a solid scenario team. You have a safe grab in Zemo. You have 2 steals, one of the best steals on Voodoo. You have Bump, which gets Voodoo way more attacks. You have a super tanky 3 with a good attack. And you have Blade, who's fine at attacking. If you're in that... So if you got to think about it. If you're in the scenario game of like Webs, for example... Again, I'm not saying we're better than Webs. Who knows? I haven't played the matchup enough recently. But, like, you put that in the Webs and you say, all right, I got 2 steals. I got 3 Mystic Attack users. I have Bump to get where I need to go. Like, yeah, I'm not as scenario as you, but I attack a hell of a lot better than you, and I still have the steals to make the scenario, and safe grabs to make the scenario game work. That I think is I think there's a world there where, like, Suns can definitely do it, where you play, it's kind of like my convocation where I played scenario, I played Rhino, I played Voodoo, but and Bump was reactive, but I also would kill a model with Mystic attacks and with Strange and scalpeling and being aggressive to say, all right, I'm not here to run around and do no damage, but I'm going to kill a model or two and then steal things, and then you can't get it back because of whatever, right? I think we're kind of I think that space is very much fine, and it doesn't scare me to play in that space. And so Bots talked about, hey, maybe Black Cat comes back. And so he said it on the podcast. I was thinking about it this morning. And it's one of those ones where it's almost like Shang versus Gwenham, except it's not the best one. But why did Shang kind of take Gwenham's spot? Why did he kind of ruin her from Midnight Suns? Well, it was this efficiency versus... what's the word? It was just like pure stats and a great model versus... oh, Jesus Christ. Whatever... Man, okay, I don't want to blank because I'm doing this live and I don't edit. She works with Bump. Synergy, that's the word. She has synergy with Bump, and Shang is just fucking good, right? And he has some Bump cases too. Everyone can use Bump. But she was like strictly like really, it turned her up a notch, right? But Shang kind of wins out because he's just a better model, and it's just fine. And so I don't think Black Cat is good with Bump. I think she's in that world of like, okay, there are some things that are good with Bump. Let's okay. She's not great with Bump, but she kind of shit with Siege, right? Do you really want to spend 2 power to do a 4-die attack? Maybe if you need to kill somebody. It has Pierce. It auto bleeds if you deal damage. Like it's fine. It's not she's not the ideal user, but at the same time, she's a very good 3. She's considered one of the best 3s in the game, and she's affiliated. So like if people would splash her for no reason, just out of like you would splash her just because she exists. Webs is an example, and don't crucify me if you're a fucking Webs player, but like she has no inherent synergy with. Okay, she's better at attacking on an all webbed up turn, and she can spend the power for all webbed up. And okay, a reroll of a die on a defense die reroll with her is whatever to me. Like, okay, it's just as okay, fine, whatever. So like, it's not like she's getting anything there where she's used all the time. She's not getting extra power. She's not for like maybe in Hellfire where she's getting extra power so she can stagger more or where anything like that, right? So why does she have to be good with Siege? Like she's affiliated. She could be your 4th affiliated model. Like if you just think about her as being unaffiliated sometimes to some extent, right? Okay. She's a good model. She in the scenario world, you could pay 1 power to get a claw attack on a D shape because she can walk bump, get to the point and attack it. She can walk bump between D's if you want to walk and make attacks. Like you're really paying 1 power for the chance at a 4-die attack, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. But at the raw, like let's remove bump from the equation just for a second. She's one of the best 3s in the game. She comes with a stagger. She doesn't allow crits. You can't really spike her that hard. She's stealth. She's annoying if she grabs extracts. Like, I don't know. That's just it, right? She can dive back Bs and be very hard to like get rid of. Like if you're rolling like 5 dice, 4 dice attacks against her, like if you don't spike her, like she's obnoxious as shit to get rid of. And she's fine with power. Like right if she wakes up with power, she can stagger stuff. She might get the elusive trigger. She can steal from you. She just does annoying things, period, right? She's just work to get rid of for a 3 threat. And that's worth something, right? So maybe she comes into the roster. You say, all right, let's think about her in those terms. Where does bump maybe play a role? Okay, I think the biggest thing is obviously she has a grappling hook for 2. Bump is cheaper. Let's just be straight up. Bump is cheaper. If you have 3 power with her, you could bump, troublemaker somebody, and then walk away, right? Maybe it gets you that extra distance you need to get to an objective. You could, if you have a ton of power, right? If you have 6 power, sometimes she doesn't start close enough. Like people kill her at range 2 and she can't steal because the steal's only range 1. You could bump, steal, walk away. That only costs 4 power, and if you had 6 power, you could place again, right? So that's essentially you couldn't do that before, right? If you woke up with 4 power on her, you could not steal and get away if you weren't within range 1. There you go. That should be all you need right there. Like that's a really specific, but she wakes up with power, like 6 power all the time, right? 6 gets you all of it, but it's not unreasonable for her to wake up with like a decent amount of power and be able to do that, or double stagger. If you wake up with 5 power and you're not within a good range of people, it pretty much makes your troublemaker range 4. You could bump troublemaker, maybe get the elusive back, right? So like it always can help extend those ranges when she gets power. It might just not help her early on. Okay, so how does that... So that got my brain going. Okay, I'm talking about today before I made this video, and I went on a walk, and I started thinking, man, where does she fit into these teams? Does she make some very interesting teams for some very interesting scenarios? So you can already say that, okay, even with Immortal Hawk, she kind of gets a little bit interesting because, like, if you're looking for a little control, maybe they have Kaiju's, maybe they have Hawk. Like she brings the stagger. Okay, maybe that. Um, but the team I was talking about before, let's just say 17. 17. And we got to put her in the roster for me to do this. So let's go back to editing. So I would, let's just take out Wong because I hate fucking Wong. So maybe I was looking at the wrong cat because I was looking at Bast for a while, right? So if we go to the breakdown, I love this feature. Let's remove iHawk, Midnight Suns, and we want Black Cat, right? We want to have Black Cat in the squad. We want to have Voodoo, right? I think this is like the idea. Think if you could run these three. So 16, you're probably not going to run that 16. But 17, okay. This is not a bad 17 right here. Like, okay, Man-Thing, he's cool, but there's like some scenario things where you just don't want him as much as Cat. Like, she attacks almost as good. She is Incinerate. If he gets enough power, his place gets really good. But like from a steal perspective, like you have a safe grab, you have a tanky guy, you have, Black Cat has a steal, he's a steal safe grab. You're two long movers. I don't know. You just look at this and you say, that could play against Webs, right? Like, you have 3 Mystic people, a very fast guy with Swordsman. Okay, who would this be, right? Who would she be that is so much better? Well, at least she has a steal, right? At least at the end of the day, she can go pick up an objective and be somebody that Webs has to deal with, and then she can potentially steal it back. That's kind of where with her, I'd want to pick up the damn objective. Or you just wait and get enough power and steal later on. You have other people doing damage. It's not like Man-Thing does a ton more damage unless he has a ton of power. And if you have a ton of power, you just steal things or stagger people, right? I think 18 and 19 and 20 has some interesting teams. I think this team. No. Yes. No? This one was Zima. Where's the fuck Zima? Oh, it's down here. I think this team on hammers is pretty good. You have 3 steals, a safe grab, and tons of movement with bump and just shenanigans, right? Like, this is kind of like... So, I've run convocation teams that are kind of like the same idea. Where you have, like, Rhino, Voodoo, Blade... Well, you'd have Strange. But essentially, instead of, like... It was like Strange and Wong, right? Instead of Cat and Blade. And then you have a different leadership. So, there's a different game. But let's just... Blade is just as good as killing like Webs as Strange. He's a little less movement, but yeah, he can do the job. In fact, he probably is better at it if he can get 2 attacks off with his spender. Like, and then you don't have shitbag Wong. You have like fucking Cat to steal and be annoying, right? And then your leadership is more active than reactive because you're not. I mean, yes, bump is very good, but you're not. It's not as good as active bump because, in my opinion. Just because if they're not attacking you, you have agency in Suns to kind of go do stuff. And you have Siege. Siege with these 2 models is perfectly fine. Like, you don't need... Mummy Siege isn't even that good. Like, if you compare Cat and Mummy to Siege, Mummy's is better if you're there, but a lot of times you're blasting people with your spender that it's like, whatever. Obviously, there are times where I would take Mummy, and he probably maybe... depending versus Webs. Like, you're never going to be sad having Mummy versus Web. So, but I would upgrade him to... I'd probably upgrade him to Rhino and be okay, too. Even though a lot of people would probably hate to see... You could take Mummy here, and I think it's fine. I think there's situations where Cat is fine. I think there's situations where Mummy could be here, depending on what you want to do. But I think from a scenario perspective, it's a very good 19, whether or not you have Cat. Cat seems really nice at the 17... The 21 is interesting to me. So, like, you could play this one. I actually think this 20 is really interesting on Scoundrels. Depending on the threat. I mean, it's going to be 20, but, like, you're effectively... This has the feel of my... Now, this feels like my convocation. Because I ran a convocation team that was essentially... The one that I loved the most back in the day was, like, Voodoo, Strange... Ultron 2, Rhino, Wong. And I can hands down tell you I've lost like 1 game on Scoundrels in like the last 20 games. I almost never lose on Scoundrels, which is weird considering some of the teams I play against. And I don't play teams that are like perfect at it. That's, I guess, maybe I'm just good at playing Scoundrels. But this has vibes of that. Where the one thing I like about this is it's sneaky. It's sneaky. It's not sneaky scenario. You have 3 fucking steals in it, but it's also sneaky like damage and like bullshit stuff like that. Your 5Y skull can shoot the shit out of people. 3 steals. You still have like it's still damage. Like it's not hands down oppressive damage, but like, damn, you can get some damage off. And this team looks really good. Like it could be again, Cat. You don't need Cat here. But, like, the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, Cat's not bad in this team. It's kind of funny, this team up here, like, if you want to run 6 wide. But then I was actually thinking about this team, and then I was like, why take these 3, right? Which, they're not bad. Let's not say that. But why take these 3 when you get 3 models and then more movement and more, like, damage for 1 less? I think there are cases for both. But it's kind of funny to do that. So, did I have a 19 with her? 19 with her is whatever. I think you could run Zemo and not care. I think you could run this team with her. This could be Mummy, too. Like, I'm sure there's situations where you want... Like, she can be any 3. Like, it really isn't... unless you're running multiple 3s, it's not that interesting. But, like I said, at 17, like, I think she's better than Man-Thing at doing it. She staggers, like... I don't know. I almost want to try it. Like, I do think if you, in some of these worlds where you want, like, multiple, like, being able to run triple steals, and it's only 1 card. You're 2 affiliated and 1 is Rhino's card. Like, that has to be good, right? Right? I don't know. I don't think Cat is good with, I don't think there's anything inherently good about Cat and Midnight Suns other than being affiliated. But if you treat her like an unaffiliated steal from like your mental perspective, and that some of these teams, like the fact that she is affiliated is good because it's like here, like that team. I feel like it's good in my head. That's like a good team. That's like super annoying on Scoundrels because like again, Mummy is good. Mummy is a fantastic model. We're not here to like. I'm not running her on like fucking Fisk. But she has to be good in like some of these situations where she's just being an asshole like Mummy would. It's just different. I don't want to talk like I don't know. It's hard to compare them. There's also teams with both of them, which I think I really like. But just having the option there, feels like it could be really strong into some teams that have trouble killing her, and the stagger is really good, and just being a body that's annoying. Where maybe Man-Thing is more of a like on. Like Fisk or something, he can actually like survive a damn hit with Eyehawk. I could see more worlds where like the Man-Thing. Didn't I say don't play Eyehawk? I thought I said that. Like I think there's more worlds. Yeah, if you get rid of Man-Thing in your teams, it kind of like you're focusing on teams that aren't like they're these. I think there's teams where like Eyehawk and Man-Thing go really well together, and I also think there's teams where like Cat and the rest of the squad go really well together, just as a 3 threat. In fact, I think there's a team at 17 with Cat. Like, I actually think this team is okay on Infinity. Like, you have the double safe grabs. I do think probably Man-Thing's better. Like, she can be really good on it. But, like, the fact that Man-Thing can start teleporting your Eyehawk around seems a lot more oppressive than, like, her getting a stagger. But if you're against something wider and you're not taking Eyehawk, turning this into, at 17 into... This is 17? Oh, into Voodoo Mummy, for example, like, that gets pretty spicy. Or at 18, like, turning... you can still go double steals. You could go like this. Like, I don't know. I think it's an interesting prospect, given that right now nobody is taking her on my Squad Goals team. Anyway, just want to talk about that. Thanks.